Hi everyone, welcome to Type Talks. Today's topic is NFPs in Japan. And so Matt, would you like to tell us a bit about you?
Sure. My name is Matt Sherman. I run the Geek Psychology YouTube channel, as well as INFPpositive.com, a place for INFPs to understand themselves and get into personal growth and fix their life, I suppose. And I've been in Japan pretty much since 2003. Came here when I was 18. There have been 3 years, two I went back into the States, and then 1 in Korea. And so I've been here for like a third of my life, and I'm excited to talk to another NP, I guess, about the different struggles and joys of being in Japan.
Matt's channel is wonderful. You should go check it out. I'll link it in the description box below. And he has amazing content, especially if you're an INFP. You should definitely go check it out. Bryan, would you like to tell us a bit about you?
Okay, yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Bryan, and I am also an ENFP here in Japan. And yeah, I'm a teacher here, and I also write. I'm a blogger, and I write fiction, and I have a podcast that you can check out. And yeah, I'm eager to get into this, so I'll keep the introduction short.
For sure. And hi, my name is Joyce, and I'm a certified MBTI practitioner, and I facilitate the instrument in organizations. So Japan, NFPs. How does the structure and tradition in Japan impact you NFPs? Like, how does it jive with you guys?
There are just so many things in Japan that are done the way that they are because that's the way they've always been done. Like, that's usually the response that you get when you're like, no, why don't we just do it this way? Why don't we change something or whatever it is? It's like, no, but we've always done it this way. Fax machines still everywhere. A lot of documents are in paper instead of digital forms. Like, you go to the clinic and they just have like a back office of just rows and rows of paper files about their patients and stuff like that. And so, like, from an NP, somebody who prefers and values extroverted intuition, it's like, well, why don't we just change things up? Like, just stop doing it this way. Maybe it works. It does. But, at some point there's some desire to just shake things up or just change or like kind of follow along with, I guess follow along is kind of a strange word, but like to go along with what is emerging in terms of technology and things like that and kind of catch up to speed. So there's always kind of a little internal conflict within that. And like tertiary function introverted sense. I don't know how deep I should get into this, but like,
Go full nerd.
Okay, well, like in a lot of ways, I really identify with it and I like it, but also it's that eternal child, right? I see it also as kind of childish. Just internally, I see introverted sense in that way. And so seeing that, like, this is how it keeps happening, but you could take the more adult perspective, the auxiliary function perspective, right? And change things and do it in a different way, or, at least just be okay with things not following the same pattern. There's a lot of that internal kind of bouncing back and forth and conflict within my mind. Whenever anybody tells me to do it one way, it's like going to like the DMV, right? And kind of waiting in long lines and doing slow procedure all the time. That's how I see it anyway.
It is true. NFPs like to shake things up. Yeah, they're willing to experiment to find the better way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a constant reworking in my experience, because there are lots of structures and traditions, and a lot of them are unspoken. And because of that, I don't always know what they are, even though I've been here. I didn't mention this, but I've been here also since around 2004. So I've been here a long time, but how I deal with it is it's kind of a case by case basis, I try to believe in the idea of when in Rome, do as the Romans do. But at the same time, I also need to know why like why these rules exist, and if I'm not given those answers, or the answer I'm given just doesn't add up for me, then I might be more willing to break the rule. But I'll try to do it in a way that doesn't draw attention to myself. Because I'm not trying to be a jerk about it. It's just more, this rule doesn't really make sense and it feels wrong to my integrity. And so I'm going to try to sneak around it a bit. And then if that doesn't work and I'm caught, then I'll try to rely on charm and then laugh about it and go, oh, I'm not from here, and go from there.
Yeah, like kind of going back a little bit to that, like I love the traditions and the culture of Japan. I mean, when I first came here, I would go templing because I lived in Kyoto. So I would just, like, every week, maybe even a couple times a week, I would just go into the different shrines and temples and just kind of bathe in the Japanese culture type aspects. But I was also kind of in the honeymoon phase of like, wow, this is new to me as well. And so there's, of course, definitely a place for that. I wear yukata and like I wear traditional Japanese clothes and stuff when I go to festivals and things like that, whenever I get a chance, because I love it. But in terms of like bureaucracy and rules that kind of stop me from doing things that I want to do faster or that I don't understand, as you said, like, well, why do you do it this way when there's clearly this other way that works so well? That's kind of when I try to figure out a different way of going about it, or I just kind of like suck it up sometimes. I'm like, yeah, this is just how it is. There's nothing I can do about that.
Yeah, I'm the same. Like I love the traditional old Japan. That's probably my favorite aspect of the culture here. And I love the temples, and I spend a fair amount of time exploring such places and finding them. And so that aspect of tradition and structure, I definitely I feel drawn to, and I feel as an American, especially from the West Coast, like, I've joked with my wife and my wife who's Japanese, we were in Whistler in Canada once, and we went to this restaurant, and the sign said established 1977, and my wife and I just cracked up because I'm like, that's younger than I am, It's like, but they're trying to make it seem like it's been around forever, but living in Japan, like there are things here that have been around thousands of years or whatever. So that kind of sense of time, like the deepness of time here, like I really do appreciate that. I think my pushback on a lot of the bureaucracy here is a lot of stuff that has been invented in the past, 100 years. And some of these things that the Americans brought over after the war, and it's like, do I really need to wear a tie to teach children? Like that sort of thing. Like, so, those kind of, I can see myself having that break in like the, which kind of tradition. So I think about these things a lot, and like, again, what makes sense to me, and something that's been around 1,000 years. The longer something's been around, the more I have this sense of like, well, it must work. There must be something to it because we've had it for so long, and people still get something out of it. So
yeah, something like I don't know how much we could get into it, but like with temples and shrines and stuff, they break them, they take them down and rebuild them like piece by piece in the same way, like exactly, right? But they rebuild it with new wood and things like that. And they put a new paint coat on it. I just find it interesting of like maintaining the past, but still redoing it, but doing it in the same way, just making it kind of look nicer, right? And I don't think that's something that we would do, in the States.
Yeah, there's a lot of SI in Japan, a lot of old traditions, a lot of old buildings. Sometimes the NE wants to shake it up. If they want to know why it's there, and if they can't figure out why, it's like, should I experiment? Yeah, for sure. And so a topic that would be interesting to talk about is the gaijin card. What is the gaijin card?
all right, I'll answer this one since I brought this up before. The gaijin card Now, I could be wrong about this, but I believe it's from the movie Rising Sun, which came out in the early 90s at the peak of the anti-Japan backlash. Um, and so it's not necessarily a nice concept, but from my memory in the movie, one of the characters was upset. It's a kind of a murder mystery movie. It's based on a Michael Crichton novel, and they're investigating the murder, and these foreign police, because I think it's an American who's in Japan who's murdered, and he gets frustrated with the slowness of the Japanese bureaucracy, and so one of the police detectives just loses his temper, and then afterwards explains to someone, "Oh, that was me using the gaijin card." And gaijin is the Japanese word for foreigner, and so he was using his foreigner's card, which is basically that as a foreigner in Japan, you're not expected to follow, you're not Japanese, and you never will be. And you're not expected to follow all the rules. And so we get a certain amount of freedom as a result of that. And that means sometimes we, and I will admit to using the gaijin card, we will use the gaijin card to sort of maybe change the rules to our advantage. And that's my understanding, and that's how I use the gaijin card. But I use it sparingly. I try not to overuse it because I don't want to be a jerk.
Yeah. I think you kind of hit on the point of no matter how long you're in Japan or how fluently you speak Japanese, you're always going to not be Japanese. You're always going to be a foreigner, no matter what you do, right? I've been here for so long, and still people will be like, "Well, when are you going home?" I'm like, "Well, this is my home. Like, I feel way more comfortable here, and I've been here for so long." And so there's always going to be that thought process, or people saying like, "Wow, you're so good with chopsticks." Like, use them for a long time, right? Like, and so sometimes playing the gaijin card, playing the foreigner card, just kind of gets past that, right? Like, yep, silly me. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm a foreigner in Japan, right? But in other ways, it does allow you more freedoms, as you said. It definitely like clashes with many aspects of myself. I remember doing it before. I've strategically used it, but I remember I was on a train one time when I sat in like the luxury seats. I didn't have the ticket for that, and somebody came by and they were asking me like, "Where's your ticket?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't speak Japanese. I don't know what you're saying." And it felt so wrong, and an introverted feeling, kind of like identity level, like But also, my like I'm proud that I studied Japanese. I'm proud that I put time into it. And so pretending that I don't speak Japanese also feels kind of like I'm kind of being disingenuous to myself in a lot of ways. Even if the cost for that is greater than just kind of pretending I don't. Does that make sense?
The FI sometimes is like, when should I pull this? When is it morally right to pull out this gaijin card? Yeah. Japan is a very collectivist culture. And a lot of people in the tech community, or maybe you both, have spent some time in America too, which is a very individualistic culture. How does the collectivist culture in Japan impact you? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, like part of me feels like an aspect of my life's work is to find the balance between those two things. Because when I was in the US, I always felt like, oh, this culture is too selfish, too individualistic, and I want more community. And then I moved to Japan, and now it's like, oh, this culture feels too group oriented. And, so it's like, I want more individuality. And so, like, in my mind, I've been thinking and working in for a while now on this like vision for a novel where I have like this balanced culture between the two. But how does it, okay, I'll just use an example. If you go, like, I'm a baseball fan, and baseball is huge in Japan. And if you go to a Japanese baseball game and the umpire makes a bad call, and you stand up and go, that was a terrible call, like, you'll probably be the only person standing up doing that. Or if you applaud for the other team, you'll probably be the only person. Meanwhile, when your team is batting, everyone will stand up and they have these noisemakers and they're all cheering at once. And so it's a group cheering, you know? And for me, that feels, as an American, it just feels really strange because I'm at a game and, you know, like I want to cheer when I feel inspired to cheer, or I want to boo when I feel inspired. And like the kind of sense of doing things as a group, I personally struggle with that a lot. Like even when I was growing up in church and everyone would read together and the sound of everyone reading at the same time, it's like I get sort of the heebie-jeebies from that a little bit. So I struggle with it a lot as far as just the sense that it feels too choreographed, you know, and too robotic, and not like there's any individuality to it, any thought. But I will say it does have its positives. Like I see, as a person who taught in the schools here for many years, watching the way the kids clean the schools here. So in the schools in Japan here, they, you know, there's not a, they, well, there are janitors, but not so like there's like one. There's not like a staff. But after lunch every day, or it depends at the school, but the kids all spend 10, 15 minutes cleaning. And it's interesting because it's like they just kind of learn how to do it as a group and it gets done really quickly. So that's probably a lot more efficient, and they learn to be responsible for their school. So they probably won't, in my opinion, I think that's one of the reasons the schools are cleaner here, because the kids are like, well, if I mess this up, then me and my friends are gonna have to clean it. So so I can, you know, I do see the pluses of it, but personally I find it challenging a lot of the time. So
Yeah, the FI finds it kind of weird to do everything like everyone else. FI kind of wants to be a little bit individualistic or original or its own human being. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, it's a constant push and pull, and I as well see the benefits, right? When everybody is going along. This is something that like helped me appreciate extroverted feeling more. You know, it's like seeing that like when everybody is aligned and together and understand what's expected, then you can make the whole system, I suppose, better, the whole culture better. And yet with that comes individuality not being expressed. You know, they say like the nail that sticks out the most gets hammered down, right? So don't show that you're different. Don't dissent. Don't go against what is expected, because you'll be kind of shunned in ways, or stand out in ways that maybe you don't want to, which we do all the time anyway. Just being, you know, we look a little bit different than most Japanese people. So yeah, so there's that push and pull, and school, yeah, the school culture and stuff like that. Everybody kind of working together to maintain their school and stuff. I think that's really cool. They have a lot of hierarchy with like the senpai and the kohai, like the superiors and subordinates or whatever. And it works out in many ways for them as well. But for me, I do kind of clash with it, especially with like more polite language. I respect my elders and other people that I haven't met or haven't really gotten close with, but to use distancing language with them makes me feel like I'm intentionally creating barriers in order to maintain this socially expected norm. And so I kind of butt heads with that, and I try to get past that as fast as I can.
Yeah.
yeah, if I can piggyback on that real quick with something that frustrates me here, that like the respecting of elders. Again, I generally think that's a good cultural instinct, but I do see in, you know, this culture also has it's a very patriarchal society, so it's a men elders are, you know, at the top, and I do see a fair amount of what I consider to be elderly Japanese men abusing that. Maybe they're playing their elder Japanese man card. And like, for example, at the convenience stores here, I've had many times where an old Japanese guy will come in and just cut right in front of the line. And that is a case where I'm like 100% I'll use the gaijin card and I'll just tap him on the shoulder and say, no, back of the line. And it's interesting when I've done that because it's throwing a huge wrench into the gears of the culture here because you're just not supposed to do that. But it's like, because I'm a foreigner and I'm following the rules, right? And I'm saying like, look, like there's a group of people here in line, and usually they'll just kind of bow and they'll go. But I have had a few that have gotten kind of angry with me about it, and I've been like, well, what are you going to do? Like, I don't want to fight about this, but like, let's, come on, just wait a minute and you'll get to go. So,
yeah, that happens quite a bit on the trains too. The old ladies that just like will just walk up and just cut through everybody and just go sit down. You're like, should I say something about that or not? Like, it's not gonna kill me, so I usually don't. Right? That's, I guess, my Enneagram 9 coming out as well. But like, I'll be fine, right? But still, I'm like, I do kind of glare at them and be like, what are you doing? Like, respect the rules, I suppose. I don't know, but yeah, I liked how you put it about playing their version of the card.
It's good to respect your elders, but when the elders are taking advantage of the fact that they're elders and doing things that are against the rules because everyone else will just respect elders, it's kind of like sus. It's like, huh, wait, we don't get to break these rules, but you do? Yeah, I can see the frustration there for sure.
That comes up a lot though. Like, we don't get to break these rules, but you do. But that's because of authority. That's because of being a senpai. That's because of their time and experience, I suppose. Like, that happens within every system in Japan. Businesses and schools. And
right. Like at schools, as a teacher once,
a variation of that.
I got in trouble my first or second year here because I was eating candy at my desk, and one of my students who I liked was like talking to me, and I gave her a piece of candy, and it was like, no, like the students aren't allowed to eat candy. And then it just made me feel like, well, then I'm kind of a jerk if I'm allowed to do it and eating in front of them. So then that's when I quickly adjusted my own behavior to, well, if there's students around, then I'll put the candy away and wait for them to leave the room, But, that's again what we were getting at the very start. I mentioned some of the unspoken rules. Like, when you come to Japan, you're not given like a rule book of things. I mean, there's the general things you're given, like, take your shoes off before you enter a place, the general things. But like there's so many rules in this culture that you don't really know, and you just have to learn by mistake and, laugh about it. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. What are some of these unspoken rules? Maybe we can name off as many as you can come up with right now, because I'm curious. I want to know how it's like to live in Japan.
Don't yawn. I don't know if you've ever gotten in trouble for that one. Yeah. I mean, it's seen as like, oh, I've completely checked out if I yawn. But to me, I'm like, if I yawn, I yawn. I don't know. Like, it's not like I'm intentionally like, I'm going to yawn at 11:53. It just kind of comes out, right? I generally, of course, I try to cover it up, but still, it's like, well, but you yawned, so you must be bored and tired and not paying attention. And within Japanese, there's the active listening, where you're just like, you always, and you kind of like, just make sure that you're checked into the conversation. And I think yawning is dissociating from that a little bit too much. So maybe that's one.
There's a huge respect theme in Japan. It's almost like yawning is disrespectful because it shows disinterest. So yeah, a lot of unspoken rules around respecting people.
There's also like, don't blow your nose like in front of everyone. Like, do it really subtly. Which I don't know. Maybe that's a rule in other places too. But there do seem to be a lot of rules about like showing, like being kind of downplaying your bodily functions, and so the yawning made me think of that. But meanwhile, on the other hand, like going back to the old men, you'll see old men here like taking a leak, like just in the most obvious places, and you're like, dude, you could have taken just 10 more steps and there's like a good wall right there, but they'll so there's the other side of it where when you're from the US you'd be like, well, that is a no, but here it's like, I guess it's okay. So and I guess it's kind of a rule. I guess that's like the unspoken freedom, I guess, in that way. So
they're very comfortable talking about bowel movements too, which is something that it's not a rule. It's not a rule that you have to, but it's like, coming from a culture where it's generally, it's just not something you talk about. Oh yeah, this happened today, or didn't happen. I'm like, I don't really want to know, but thanks for sharing. In terms of other like cultural rules, like being careful with your chopsticks and not passing food with your chopsticks, because that's something that they pass bones at funerals and stuff like that. Like there's kind of these culturally past tradition tied rules and things like that you just don't do. Don't play with your food. Of course, that's something that like pretty much everywhere I think is a thing, but the level of care attached to it, I think, is different, in Japan for some things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not sure if this is a rule or not, but I find that one of the I think this is universal, but one of the conversational topics when you meet someone is like, oh, especially in the summer here, like, oh, atsui desu ne, like which means it's really hot today, and I think it's kind of an unwritten rule. You're supposed to agree and kind of like show it's like a way of camaraderie, but like in the winter, they say the opposite. Oh, it's really cold today. Where for me, I find the winter where I live is like mostly pretty pleasant. So, and oftentimes I'll be, I ride my bike in, so I'll be warm at the time and I'll be like, I'll have enjoyed the morning. And I've had times where I'm like, oh, actually, I'm pretty good today. I like this weather. And I have noticed that some people, the more traditional Japanese, have been kind of like almost disappointed that I didn't agree with them on it's cold, and it's like, to me, I'm just like I thought we're having a conversation, so but I don't know if that's an unwritten rule or not, but I do think there is kind of that sort of agreement part of the language, and that's the stuff that I still find challenging, like not knowing, when I'm supposed to say something or when I'm not allowed to,
Yeah, there's definitely that expectation. Like conversation is so fluff here, and it's just like, oh, come on, I don't really care. Like it's always like, great weather today, great weather, yes, great weather, it's great weather, goodbye. Like, and it's just, there's like nothing like substantial under that, and it drives me nuts. Not as much now because I've been so accustomed to it, I guess, acclimated to it. But it drove me nuts. Also, like when I went back to the States, the last time I went back was like maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I had, reverse culture shock a lot, which I was just walking around in the hotel and like somebody stopped and had a conversation with me. I was like, who is this guy? I don't know who this is. Why are they talking to me? But I was so like positively influenced by it. And also just the staff at the registers and stuff like that. When I was in the States, you would never get that here. You do not say like, how's your day today to the staff. They're just like, would you like anything else? like a conversation every once in a while, maybe. That would be nice. But so that is definitely kind of always there. It's like don't get too close to people that you don't know yet. And it's pretty hard, like when you're like on the dating scene and stuff like that. A lot of times you have to go through a friend. Like, this is my friend's friend. Okay, you're safe now. You're in. Like, we can talk now. But this person that is just like I meet randomly on the street, like that's scary because this person hasn't been like vetted by somebody I know and I'm friends with. Of course, it's not always like that. There's the whole club scene and stuff like that too, but it is an issue.
Yeah, what you just talked about reminded me of when I lived in the States. I used to go to a lot of music festivals, and then I've been to a few here in Japan. The two big ones are Summer Sonic and then Fuji Rock. And I remember being so disappointed because I thought, this was a naive thought, but I thought when I went, like, oh, this will be a place where people will be mingling and there will be like festivals back home, and yet I went to these festivals and it was like everyone was in their groups, and there was still that, it was like just not really that connection. And like, back home, I feel like people do that too with the being in their groups. But when you go to festivals, it's kind of like all of a sudden it's opened up and there's more ability to like, okay, the rules are a little looser here. But not my experience the 3 times I've been to the Japanese rock festivals. Even though we're seeing, Western bands, it's like, no, everybody's still kind of in their groups, and you can't. And that, like that feels to me, it can feel like, I think it ties into how this culture can be sort of alienating for even the people that live here. Like, because if you don't have that group, then it's really hard to get into another one. So.
Yeah. One thing that I did a lot, and this was also, part of my own journey of learning how to do extroverted intuition more and be comfortable with, random nodes and happenings and whatever emerges. But I would wear costumes, like fluffy kangaroo costumes and stuff like that, or whatever it was, when I went out to the clubs. And it made me stand out a lot more. And through that, it kind of like made other people comfortable with approaching me, right? They would be okay with, taking that step, but also like it showed that I was comfortable with who I am, right? But also it kind of like, I think it just kind of like went to the far extreme of like, I'm an individual. If you're okay with individuals, and you're okay with this kind of different mindset, then we can talk. And it kind of like sped up that process. Like it was a visual sign of being different, even more so. So that was definitely very helpful. And I remember, it's not Japan, but when I was in Korea, at the clubs there, like everybody would face, and still in Japan they do it too, but not to the extreme. Everybody would face the DJ, everybody facing the same direction. And they had like special dances for most of the songs that people would learn. And it felt so weird that everybody was facing the same direction, doing the same thing all the time. It's a whole different culture, but just kind of reminded me of that, I suppose.
Well, I'll say to that, even back in the States, like I'm a guy who comes out of the hippie culture, and like I followed Fish around, and like the last time I saw Fish 2 summers ago in Washington State, I was noticing like a lot of that, like everybody's just standing and watching the bands. So me being an ENFP, I was doing a lot of like trying to like create the circular energy that I love to get going. And I noticed the thing was, it was a 3-night show. Like there was one show for 3 nights in a row. And by the 3rd night, that was like the first night it was really facing, and then the second night it was like this, and then by the 3rd night everybody was moving around more. So, but I think that it is interesting how these things. I'm not sure if that would happen in Japan, but like would it break open? But it feels like it's probably less likely.
Japan is. I thought it was SI before, but now I think it's like super SI, because there's a lot of specific particular traditions just to that culture. And it's very like the hyper specificity was what makes it super SI. And I'm like, wow, interesting.
Yeah. Can I hop on that? I find the culture is like a very ISFJ kind of culture. But I feel that, and this is kind of just my own pet theory, that a lot of the people are SPs, a lot of ISFPs. I mean, like if you watch TV, everything is about like, oh, this food has this specific taste and it's got this texture, and oh, it feels like this when it's melting in your mouth. I have absolutely no idea what an apple tastes like. Like I have no concept of that stuff. But I think that and how like unintuitive a lot of people are here, and their kind of conflicts with that, as well as like the lack of individual expression. I think like all that really piles up on a lot of the stress that Japanese people go through. It's a huge drinking culture. You're like required to go out with your coworkers to go drinking and stuff like that. A lot of coffee and tobacco and stuff like that, and a lot of suicide. And I think a lot of that comes from that like squashing of individual expression. And so that's kind of my own little pet theory of like why it happens so much and stuff like that. It's like a bunch of ISFPs living in an ISFJ culture or ESFJ.
Yeah, when you live in a culture that suppresses your individuality, what will happen is your shadow will grow and grow. Yeah, yeah. The more parts of yourself you kind of cut off, the more they become your shadow. And so there's a lot of shadow behavior in the form of drinking, in the form of other behaviors as well to cope with the cutting a part of yourself off. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If I can piggyback on the drinking culture a little bit, because this is something as in, again, talking about loosening up the group, just the relationships here. It's really interesting. You go out on these with your coworkers and you go out drinking, and all of a sudden you'll see these sides of people that you've just never seen before. And I don't know about you guys, but when I drink, I don't usually black out. So the next morning I remember this stuff, but you are not supposed to bring that up the next morning. It's like it didn't happen. It's like we're back to where we were before. That was a different person. That was a different world. And so they have these boundaries between their kind of their activities that can really, to me, I find challenging, because as an ENFP, I want to, like, I see through those boundaries, and I'm like, well, we had this experience together, so now I know that you like Van Halen and you will do the scissors jump off the table, and that's cool, man. But it's like, don't talk about that, don't talk about that. Like, that's not me. We're at work now, So there's just I was just thinking about that.
Yeah, that happens a lot. Yeah. I don't really have much else. It's a lot of drinking and kind of letting loose finally, right? We're finished with the day or the end of the year, like one of the big drinking parties or whatever. And we can finally let loose. We can talk about all these other things. Usually everybody goes back to talking about work again. But eventually, you can break some of the conversations, and yeah, but that's a different experience, a different life, a different persona than a lot of the ones they bring to work. They and myself too.
Yeah, when you're always trying to portray a persona or to kind of restrict yourself, the natural shadow to that, just letting loose, kind of letting out your wild side wants to come out. It's kind of like, you have a teenager in a household and their parents are ultra controlling. So they might follow the rules of the parents while they're with the parents, but they might have this wild side where they hang out with their friends. They do a bunch of things they probably shouldn't do because to let it loose, because you have to have an outlet for that other side of you. Yeah, totally. Any other weird quirks of the Japanese tradition?
I don't know about quirks, but what you just said made me think about how and I really know, like, probably the least amount of anybody in the world on this topic, but the Japanese manga, the animation culture, and going back to what Matt was saying about TV here, like the TV, all the programs are like so colorful and just like, it's like, so I kind of see that as like all these things that kind of are repressed just get expressed some way, and so even a normal TV show that you would think back home would be like not so crazy, like here I'm like, man, like this person, they must do a lot of psychedelics or something, but I don't think that's it. I think they're just, it's this thing coming out because it has to come out somewhere. And so in a way, I think that is one of it almost is a positive thing, because the Japanese art and it's popular all over the world, this stuff. So like, maybe repression's a good thing now and then, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. It finds ways to come out. All the taboos, all those kind of hidden repressed aspects. I mean, like the sex culture in Japan is extreme. I mean, they have love hotels everywhere. You go for a couple hours or whatever. There used to be, not so much now, magazines at all of the convenience stores. They took them down. I don't know if they're back up or not. I don't tend to look at them too often. But they have just like rows and rows of these, porn magazines pretty much that old guys and people will just kind of stand by there or buy them or read them in the stores and stuff like that. And so there's like a deep yearning to express these aspects of themselves or explore these different facets. And yet there's that like, well, yeah, but you're going to be seen as weird. And so it's like an unspoken, like, we don't talk about this, but everybody does this type thing. And within TV, it's pretty strange. I don't watch too much TV anymore, but it's like, yeah, there are some very wild characters and very extremes and a lot of like transsexuals and things like that, which like Japan has a very strange relationship with that, like admiration and still like, oh, but that's so different. And it's really, yeah, it's a bizarre mix, but nature finds a way. It finds a way out. So
That was a very impressive meta review of the culture. Yeah. Breaking down the psychological reasons why it is the way it is. Very NF, looking at the metaphysical why behind human behavior. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, any other quirks in the Japanese culture?
Well, I don't know if this is, I think everybody maybe knows this one, but everyone here takes baths. Me too. I love them. And it's just part of it goes back for a long time. And so I find it interesting. Sometimes I'll be watching YouTube and Western people talking about like, oh, baths are really good for you. And like emotionally, they'll make you, and I'm like, it's because I've been here 16 years. It's just like, well, yeah, obviously, but on the other hand, I've seen Westerners are like, who takes a bath? Like, who has time for that? And well, if you have a bath next to your shower, and like here, there's a lot of high tech aspects to the culture, and like the baths, I'll bring up the other one, the toilets, like. Like I actually have a kind of a collection on my phone of like when I go out on my bike rides, I take pictures of like the greatest toilets because like some of them are just so impressive, like, and I'm like, why would this toilet in this small park that no one's using be so grandiose? Like I could camp in this thing. And it's like they're really big, it smells good. And now I'm gonna finish with like a pet peeve that's like I think it might be a quirk, and it's not a good quirk, and it goes back to the old men here, but not just the old men, because the young kid, the men, the boys here, I have found that they are pretty poor about flushing their toilet when they're done, and I've taken it upon myself to be the guy that will clean up toilets in Japan, and there's a long story to this. I won't go into it, but anyway, yeah, that's a quirk that I wish that wasn't happening here because, when you finish, just flush the toilet. Like it's not that hard.
yeah, I can't remember or say like what it's like in the States, but I definitely have noticed that. And they have like the small flush and the big flush, and so they do the small flush, and it doesn't really do much. Like I don't know, it's kind of, yeah, strange. It's a weird blend of, as you said, technology. Like there's high tech stuff. Like there's a bathroom in the middle of like Yoyogi Park, I believe, that is like it's see-through. The walls are see-through until somebody goes in, and then it like tints all the walls. Right? And like that's wow. But then fax machines and paper documents and all these other like stupid things. It's so strange, and most people don't really know how to use computers and stuff here. And it's like weird. Yeah, weird.
You gave me another one.
Oh.
The Honko. I know Matt knows what I'm talking about. Yeah, the little stamps. Instead of signing your name here, you have these little like round stamps that you're supposed to use for everything. And this is one where I'm pretty consistent on playing the gaijin card, because I'm like, my line that I go to is like, I forget my Honko, I don't forget my hand. You know, like I'm always going to be able to sign, but I might not bring my Honko. So, but it can get you in trouble, because like I had a situation where I forgot a PIN number for my bank account. And unless I had the Honko, I couldn't get a new PIN number, but we lost the Honko. And so this went on for like, finally last year when I had some free time, it took me like 5 visits to the bank to kind of finally sort it out. But I had to get like a new Honko, and then I had to fill all this paperwork. And it was just like, why can't I just sign? And I was like showing them my ID card, all my IDs. I'm like, look, this is definitely me. And I just put money into my account and you took that. So why can't, you know? But yeah, we have to stamp things with these little stamps here. And the thing that's really weird about it is if you have a common last name like Suzuki or Takahashi, you can go to the convenience store and buy a Suzuki stamp and then just use that. So it seems to make it be so, it's the forgery possibilities, it seems just so obvious, where signing is a lot more individual. So I've never really wrapped my head around why that hasn't changed, but they still do the Honko thing, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I think that's just one of those things of like, this is the way we've always done it. We've always used these stamps with our names on them. So why would we change it, right?
Yeah.
You know, there's a glaring obvious reasons, but then also that comes to like losing their culture and stuff like that. I'm sure there are a lot of like deep-rooted internal connections to those things too, but yeah, it's a pain. It's a pain. I really don't. Yeah, I don't bring it. I don't use it whenever I have a chance to not use it.
They kind of have a if it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality, but there might be glaring things that should be fixed, but it's like,
I was going to say,
no.
it's more of a, if it is broke, still don't fix it mentality sometimes too, you know, like
a lot of band-aids. Yeah. A lot of just like covering over the glaring issues. And yes, this happens everywhere too. But you know, these are just kind of the ways that it comes up for Japan.
And part of it too is that they don't like, they're not aware that it's broke, you know, where when you come from the outside, it's easier to see like, this is, you know, as our personality type too, we do question these kind of things, and they're like, was this working? And but because they've done it, it's, you know, but when you bring it up with a Japanese person, I have found a lot of them will go, yeah, you're right, that is strange, why do we do, you know? So it's not like they're not unable to understand it, they just haven't thought about it, you know. So
yeah, or waiting for somebody else to change it or fix it, or somebody else with more authority, or you know, somebody who's more concerned by it. I don't know.
Yeah, and that speaks to the whole, like, I don't know how many meetings you've been in here, but like group decision making here can be a very tedious and grueling process, and there can be a lot of fluff talk that just is like, you know, working in the public schools here, you know, we're trying to plan a lesson, and like nobody wants to decide what song to use, and it just seems to me like it's really not that big a deal. We just make a decision, but everybody has to kind of wait. And then there's like the unspoken rule of like, who's senior in this group, or, you know, we should have them have theirs say, oh, but they're getting coffee right now, but they don't say it like that. It's just like they all kind of know it. And so that sort of group, so that's a quirk that I find challenging too.
Yeah, that does happen a lot. The very, very slow meetings that don't really need to be that long. Like you could just come and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. Can you do it? Okay, let's talk about this a little bit. Okay, we're good. Goodbye. But instead it's like a 5-hour meeting to discuss whatever it is, and go through procedures and stuff like that. There's also like, there's an unspoken rule of like, if you ask to do something and it's not okay, they'll say like, they'll change the subject, or they'll kind of like gloss over it. It won't be like a direct no, but that means don't do it, right? It's like, does that make sense, Bryan? Do you know what I'm talking about? It's, yeah, unless it's like, yes, you can do this. The other times it's like, yeah, do you want some tea? And it's like, oh, but what about, can I do this thing? Yeah, but let's go look at this thing. It's like, just like defer, just keep changing the topic. And then you're supposed to take that as like, oh, I'm not supposed to do that.
Right.
Okay.
There's
Yeah.
a conflict aversion thing going on there, which I understand, but yeah, sometimes as an American, I want that direct, just clarity of communication. Like it's not going to hurt my feelings to say no. I just want to know where we stand, and I'm not a mind reader, so. But the longer you're here, you do start kind of understanding those little cues, but it's still sometimes. And again, and then sometimes if I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, no, this really should be done, and it should be a yes. Then that's where I probably will do that subtle play into the gaijin card. It's like, all right, they didn't say no, so I guess I can say yes.
That is quite skillful use of the gaijin card. Using it to break rules you think are outdated. That's a good use. Yeah, and so any other Japan quirks you'd like to bring up?
Just to add on to the bath thing, they take their baths here in shower/bath in the evening, not the morning. So, which I will say, when it's summer here, and I live in the absolute hottest part of Japan, but when it's summer here, I take a bath or a shower like 3, 4, 5 times a day. Like I'm constantly going into the water, and it's as cold as it gets. So, but yeah, in general, like the idea is that you're taking a bath to relax and unwind after the day, as opposed to the Western idea of taking a shower to kind of get yourself going. But it's a small little quirk.
Yeah, I fought my wife with that one for a while. I was like, no, I'm gonna shower in the morning because that's what I want to do. But then so I was like, well, but you're gonna go to bed dirty? Like, well, I don't know. I'll just shower in the morning. Yeah, it was that constant back and forth. And yeah, in the summer, man, it's so humid here. So I generally take as many showers as possible. I don't like the bath too much. Like I sit in it when I have time, but usually I'm just like, I just want to get in and out. But that always confuses my in-laws and my wife and stuff. So we have these conversations pretty much every time I see them, which is kind of linked back to that, how's the weather? Oh, the weather's nice. Yes, it's nice, isn't it? Type thing. So this is where our conversation lives.
I use the bath. That's my that's my reading time now. Like that's the one time of the day I'll definitely get my Kindle reading time in. But I'll tell you that the old Kindle that I had, when I dropped it into the bath, it broke it. But then I learned quickly right after that the newer models are apparently waterproof, but I have yet to really test that, and I don't want to. But yeah, that's.
Yeah. My wife, she takes like hour-long baths, and she's got a Ziploc for the phone, and it's just kind of in there. Like that's her place of just relaxing, unwinding. I just can't. Yeah, I can't do it.
Fascinating.
And sharing the bath water too. Like, yeah, I don't want to take a bath in the same bath water as grandpa or grandma. It's just not for me, and I don't think they want to as well. So I tend to just stay out of that. But the whole family is okay.
Yeah, I've barged myself to the front of the line on that. Like I take my bath first, and then if I make it dirty, everybody else has to suffer.
I'm wondering if there was a moment in time where Japan was low on water, so they developed a culture, a tradition around sharing bathwater, maybe? Or is it like more of a collectivist thing to share bathwater? Where does it come from?
Your first explanation kind of sounded right to me. I've never thought about it, but having that, like, maybe not as much running water and all this other stuff, so you just fill the bath and the whole family. I mean, like a lot of places, a lot of families here they live with different generations within the same house. Like grandpa will still live in the same house, and so maybe, I mean, that's just one part of the culture that they've held on to, and that's kind of, I can see how that's tied to the whole bathing process and everything like that too.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both those things. I mean, it's a real pain in the rear to like empty the whole bath out for 8 people in your family, or however many you have in your family, So, and it does take a lot of water. So I think it's just kind of like it's a share the resources, and especially in the older days, now it's not so hard to turn off the bath. But even like our bath here, it takes 15 minutes between emptying it out and filling it up again. So but originally we had to take a bucket from the river or whatever. That would have been take all day. So
That is true. Yeah. I realized maybe why the toilets are such high tech. So my hypothesis for why the toilets are high tech is because Japanese people really care about cleanliness. So it's down to the streets are very clean, the schools are very clean, and so they want the toilets to be clean or like they want them to be high tech so then they have the possibility of having more advanced cleaning methods.
They do miraculous things, those toilets.
Yeah, I think that theory makes sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, things are extremely clean here.
Yeah, and that speaks to another perk, like that there are but basically no public garbage cans here. So you kind of have to carry your garbage around with you. Or if you're a litter bug, I guess you can use forests and things, but I'm not. So, yeah, it can be frustrating. Once I'll just tell a brief story. When my son was 3 years old, the summer festival here, which is on the hottest, so it's like the first weekend of August, and it's the hottest weekend of the year generally. He was 3, and I gave him too much of the shaved ice, and he developed some pretty bad diarrhea. And I had a boy with leaking diaper that I had to take care of. So I brought him to the public bathroom. I got done, and there was nowhere to throw the diaper. And that was one of those times where, I was not a good person in this case, but I took the diaper and I went behind the public toilet and I was like, good enough. I just left it because it was so disgusting. I wasn't going to carry it with me, But it was just like, come on, like, you got this big festival. There's thousands of people. Have a few garbage cans because there are, but they just don't. They don't. You're expected to carry your garbage.
Yeah, they used to. They used to have a lot more. In Japan, everything is separated too by the material, right? Glass bins and plastics and cans and burnables and non-burnables. Like even trash days, like 2 days a week, I throw out the burnables, and then I have a non-burnable day. I have a paper garbage day and batteries day, and like all of these other kind of like it's really segregated in that way. But yeah, they used to have a lot more trash cans. Like it's interesting thinking how things have changed so much since like 2003 in Kyoto to now in Tokyo. And like I was like one of the only foreigners in my city. There are still some places like that in Japan too, but like seeing how that different gap, I suppose. But at that time, I do remember there were a lot more garbage cans. I know there was like a cult that put a bomb in a trash can in a public place, and so they took those out. And I think it kind of they just kept progressing with that, like just keep removing them. But so many times, I'm just like, what do I do with this? And being me, I don't want to litter. That's just how I am. Like I'll just hold on to it. I have pockets full of trash and stuff. But in other places, like I can walk down the street and there's like a fence into somebody else's yard and it's just littered with masks and alcohol cans and stuff like that. And yet in more public places, there are people cleaning every day. Right? Even those places just down the street, like outside, some people will come by and like pick it up with little tongs and clean it up, but it's not their responsibility and they do it. It's pretty interesting. But
yeah, even the neighborhoods here, like they have like a cleaning day where and you're kind of assigned these groups, and so like this is not that often, but you'll be like, okay, it's Sunday morning, 8 o'clock, we're all meeting here and we're cleaning these few blocks. And I actually kind of like that. Like I think it's kind of it's a way to meet your neighbors, and you're out getting some fresh air and you're cleaning up. And yeah, it's again, it kind of goes back to that thing with the way the kids clean the schools here, so but yeah, I just do wish sometimes that have couple garbage cans here and there, just for emergency. Because
yeah, the community watch aspect is really nice. And they have like community, like the block firefighters that kind of walk around, or kind of group watch and stuff like that. I think that's really cool. I'm not a part of it, but I could see how I could be. I could see the benefits of it. And there are some festivals nearby and stuff like that, which is nice. Like just little, the group community over here, 4 blocks or whatever, like they have festivals and stuff. It's really cool. Nice way of like bonding and showing that you're part of this whole group and you're not the outlier. And they pass like this board around that you sign, and this is your duty for this week or whatever it is.
Yeah, a few years ago, my wife hinted at me that the community fire group wanted me to join, and I wasn't even aware of this until right now. But maybe that was one of the times where I used the change the subject no, because I didn't say anything about it. I just started talking about something else. But I was kind of like, I hope they don't ask me directly, because I would have done it, but I didn't really want to, because it's like that sounds kind of hard and scary. So
very, very, very true. Thank you so much, Matt and Bryan, for coming out and sharing your experience in Japan. I learned a lot about the culture there and how it's like to live there. Thank you for telling us about all the quirks, all the little SI traditions that happen in there, and for sharing your personal experiences, and for giving your meta commentary analysis on why everything is the way it is. That was really meta, and it was really amazing to listen to. Thank you, Bryan, for teaching us about the school system in Japan. Yeah, your candy story, it was really interesting. Your FI kind of adjusted its behavior because it was like, is what I'm doing right or wrong? Like, is it good or bad? And like, yeah, you changed based off of that. So yeah, it was nice to see examples of your value system and how your value system plays out. That was really cool. And your gaijin card story, or gaijin card definition, it was like so amazing. I love learning about the foreigner card. Yeah. Yeah. And thank you, Matt, for your amazing YouTube channel. It's doing very, very well. Like, congrats on your success. And Matt has a wonderful website. It's inowfeelpositive.com. And if you're an INFP and you want to feel positive, or you want empowerment, like INFP empowerment, Matt is your go-to guy. Yeah. Thank you, Matt, for sharing stories about you and your wife. Thank you for commenting on the Japanese culture, which is ISFJ, and commenting on the shadow of the culture. Yeah. That was really amazing and very Jungian to go down that route. So that was amazing. Yeah. I really enjoy your RPG model of type that you have. That's really amazing, Matt. Yeah. So lovely chat, NFPs. You both offer such refreshing insight into the Japanese culture. I now know more about the social norms and the toilets. It's very interesting. Yeah. Yeah, the more you know. This was like a fun fact episode on Japan. Yeah, I loved all the NFP quirkiness and the individuality you bring to the panel. Yeah, I liked hearing about your individual takes on all of this. It was very FI and very, very amazing. Yeah, so thank you.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you too. This was fun. It was nice exploring Japanese culture with another NFP, and having you to guide us and keep us on track as well, Joyce.
Yeah, definitely.
I love this culture. I love being here, and I hope that did come across as well. It wasn't just all naysaying about it. I wouldn't be here if I didn't love it, and if I wasn't treated in a way that I liked. Right? I mean, I've had so many people say like, "You're so Japanese," right? Just based off their perception of me, and that's cool. That's fine. But it did bring me into the culture, and I was accepted in ways that I can also not be accepted, as we talked about before. But like, I remember when I was first here. I don't want to carry this on too long, but this is how it happens for NFPs, I think. But when I was first here, I was lost. I needed to go to the bank. I didn't know how to get there, and some random lady just stopped her car. Was like, "Do you need help?" I was like, "Yeah, I need to go to the bank, and I need help doing my whatever," just in my broken Japanese and English that I was explaining. And she let me get in her car. She drove me there and helped me out, and offered to come back and pick me up in a half hour or whatever, and just all this other like really nice stuff that would not have happened in Michigan, I don't think. Yeah, it's a great place.
Yeah, I want to kind of double down on that because I feel the same way. Like perhaps I came across as critical and that's not paying attention because I wouldn't have been here 16 years raising kids here. And I've had experiences like that too with total strangers that, just I don't think, as much as I think my home area of Washington State in the US is a pretty friendly place, I don't think it would have happened like how it happens here. So that's a positive toward the collective nature of this culture here. They do look out for each other and the people that even aren't Japanese. So I'll leave it at that. And yeah, thanks, Joyce, for having us.
Thank you both for showing us the amazingness that is Japan, for showing us the collectivist culture that helps each other out. Like, that's beautiful. It's a value that maybe everyone can take a little bit, that working together, collaborating to help the collective can be very beautiful too. Yeah. Like Bryan said, they're able to like clean places together and do it really quickly because they're doing it together. And it kind of tells us a lesson about life and about how when we do things with other people, sometimes it can make the process a lot smoother and enjoyable. Yeah. So thank you for that wonderful take on the collectivist nature of Japan. And thank you everyone for watching.